This is The Guardian.
Hello and welcome to The Guardian Football Weekly. Proper English. That's how Sarina Wiegman and the players described a brilliant win over the Netherlands in a, quote, narrative-changing performance. It was the polar opposite of the France game. The Lionesses first to every ball, making the Dutch looking pretty average and getting their Euro 2025 campaign underway. Lauren James did some excellent repaying the faith with a brilliant early strike and a great performance. Also in Switzerland, a wonderful moment for Wales and Jess Fishlock. Their first goal at a major tournament. Not enough to trouble France, but something to remember nonetheless. Over at the Club World Cup, how many times do you want to watch that Tony Rudiger miskick? PSG demolish Real Madrid to set up a final against Chelsea. There's transfer news, Arsenal lining up Madueke or Eze or both, Spurs agreeing a fee for Mohamed Kudus. Paul Watson's World of Football takes us to Kazakhstan, Finland and the far reaches of somewhere called Ireland. And I appear to have made a huge mistake when discussing eating ribs in diners in America's Midwest. All that plus your questions, and that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, Barry Glendenning, hello.
Hello, Max. I thought you might follow FIFA's lead and get Michael Buffer in to go, let's get ready to rumble.
Why would I do? Oh, did he? Oh, I didn't see that bit.
Yeah.
I didn't see the, oh, God.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so glad.
We've
I'm so
gone
glad
there.
that didn't get to my highlights feed. Nicky Bandini, hello.
Morning.
Paul Watson, welcome.
Hi, Max.
And joining us from Zurich, I presume, unless you've gone somewhere else quickly after the game yesterday, Tom Garry. Hey, Tom.
Good morning, Max. No, Zurich is where you find me. Very happy as an Englishman after last night's performance.
Yeah, and I mean, it made a mockery, that performance, Tom, of people who might have spent a long time on a podcast yesterday predicting the fallout had England lost. But, you know, there's nothing to see here. It was so much better, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's the performance that we've known these England players are capable of for a really long time. We've seen it in flashes, and it's why we get so frustrated when we see them play poorly against France or when we see them lose in Belgium or sort of limp to a lacklustre draw against Portugal a few months ago, because we've known that they're capable of playing football like this. And to be honest with you, it was, as a reporter reporting on England's women's team, it was one of the great evenings, you know, sun shining, happy crowd, every England player putting in a good performance. 4-0 against the Netherlands. It's sort of exactly the kind of idyllic scenario that you might imagine, that it would always be that easy to go and watch England. I thought they were great to watch, and they talked in the build-up about this kind of proper England, this phrase the players have apparently coined around grit and determination and getting stuck in, as well as also being purposeful with the ball. And it actually really summed it all up. They were winning their battles. They were winning the 1v1s. They were, Carter and Stanway, for example, just completely outfought the Netherlands with the intensity. And there were so many good performances. We could talk about Hannah Hampton's distribution, which was fantastic. We could talk about Russo's wonderful movement and work rate up front to get 3 assists, and overall their best performance probably since the World Cup semi-finals. They were terrific.
Yeah. Proper England, it's almost impossible not to say in Cockney, isn't it? Proper England. That's what feels like this thing that they decided they wanted to sort of build as a narrative. And it could become a thing, right? What did you make of the performance, Nicky?
Yeah, I mean, it was brilliant, wasn't it? I was wondering, obviously with Lauren James scoring the opener, and bloody brilliant opener too. Like, I was wondering if Tom thinks it's oversimplifying to say that move of pushing her out to the right was just the right one for getting a bit more of that balance in the midfield, because it felt like that was the big talking point, wasn't it, after the first game, was whether or not the team would just have a bit more, I think, options in midfield perhaps, because she was drifting out to the right anyway in that game one, so letting her just play out there and use that space. Then obviously she cuts inside to score, but it felt like the balance was a bit better.
Well, yeah, that was the big talking point from the first game tactically, of whether Sarina Wiegman maybe had got it wrong by playing Lauren James in the number 10 against France's very, very energetic and sort of intense midfield, and moving her out to the right-hand side worked to perfection, because it kind of enabled Lauren James to go and do her thing, cause the Netherlands left-back Esme Brooks all sorts of nightmares. And in the centre instead, we had Ella Toon, who was working really hard off the ball, was always giving options, and just the balance looked a lot better. I also like the tweak they made in the back, where they in the France game had Jess Carter at left back. As a right footer, that must have been quite awkward for Jess Carter to play against one of the best wingers in the Eredivisie and Delphine Cascarino. They shifted it round this time so that Alex Greenwood was left back and Carter was in the left central back role, and they both looked very comfortable by comparison. And I think England have probably now finally found their back four combination that they'll stick with. They have had a left back problem for a generation. You probably will have to go all the way back to maybe Rachel Unit. It was the last time England had a left back who made the position their own for a period of multiple years in a row. If you think back to the Euros 3 years ago, it was Rachel Daly, a striker, who was playing at left back. We've had brief spells where it's been Demi Stokes had the role for a little while, but generally, even when England made the Euros final in 2009, Casey Stoney, a centre-back, was at left back, and they've had to wait a long time. But I would hope now that this is the back four they will stick with for the tournament, because the balance looked significantly better.
Yeah. After the game, Jess Carter was asked, why were you switched? And she went, I don't know. I was just told to go there, so I went there. And I thought that was sort of a great explanation. And maybe Sarina Wiegman...
It's proper England.
Yes, yeah, exactly. It wasn't it? I don't know. Just go there. Don't ask any questions. She sort of said, I don't ask any questions because I just trust what Sarina Wiegman tells me. And I suppose that's quite a good way to be, unless Sarina Wiegman didn't want to say, did you watch the France game? That's all, But that's quite interesting, isn't it? I mean, that Lauren James strike back was so perfect, wasn't it? And such an important moment you sort of feel after everything that had been said after the first game.
Yeah, England, the players, I mean, we were very sceptical yesterday, and part of me wanted them to lose just to see what would happen next, just out of curiosity.
Part of you wanted them to lose because you're Baz and you always want England to lose.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Well, no, that's not true.
Bad.
I want the England women, or the England men's team to lose. I want the England cricket team to win. I don't care about the rugby team, and the women, I'm pretty ambivalent. But they insisted they would deliver, and they did. And Lauren James is their standout player. She set the tone, arrowed in that beauty from the edge of the box. And I think Andries Jonker, the Netherlands coach, he seemed quite shell-shocked afterwards. He said, we weren't expecting this. We thought we'd be able to give them a game, and we just weren't. And he didn't seem to have any explanations as to why the Netherlands were so poor. But I'd take my hat off to England. They were hugely impressive. So we've seen what they're capable of against France, and we've now seen what they're capable of in a better way against the Netherlands. And they do show bounce-back ability in the face of setbacks, and this was another example of that.
Yeah. For context, Tom, like France, the Netherlands and England, because if you watch this, you just... and if you'd come from having not watched the women's game until major tournaments, you'd say, well, look, France are obviously that much better than England, and they're that much better than the Netherlands. But is it not that simple? Because I thought England made the Netherlands look as bad as France made England look.
Yeah, but you're right, though, that coming into the tournament, all three were perceived to be relatively even, and certainly that was reflected in the Nations League meetings that they'd had. Last summer, France won 2-1 at St James's Park, and then England went and beat France 2-1 in St Etienne a few days later. And they were quite closely fought matches. Similarly, in the previous Nations League cycle, England had lost narrowly in the Netherlands, and then England had beaten the Netherlands 3-2 at Wembley. And all the contests were quite close. So I came into this tournament thinking, goodness, this is going to be fantastic. There's going to be these head-to-head games between France, England and the Netherlands that could all be on a knife edge. And as it's turned out, there's been a thoroughly deserved winner in the two we've seen so far. The Dutch media attitude was fascinating last night. It was quite tetchy. Jonkers, of course, leaving after the tournament to be replaced by the England assistant Arjan Veurink, and he's made it clear he's not particularly happy about that. I don't think he really wanted to leave. But the Dutch media were criticising him last night. Some even asking him, wouldn't you be better off to accept that you're not as good as these teams and approach games more conservatively? He then did a bit back and forth, sort of insisting they were still in a world-class bracket. But the tone of it was clearly very, very sort of, dejected to say the least. And I was very surprised how poor the Netherlands were in terms of creating chances. Miedema barely had a sniff. And they didn't start Danielle van der Donk, which didn't go down very well at all with the Dutch media. So maybe England caught them at a good time, but I still want to go back to how good that England performance is. And can I just throw one shout out for that pass from Hannah Hampton, the goalkeeper, for the first goal, which reminded me of sort of a professional golfer playing the perfect drive off the tee, where she managed to kind of dissect that gap between 4 Dutch players, a bit like finding a very narrow line between 3 bunkers and a tree. And it was just the perfect ball out from the back to pick out Russo, and kind of criminal that she doesn't get an assist for a pass like that, isn't it?
No, it was. She strikes the ball beautifully. I would say what the one Dutch centre-back's doing, sort of trying to win that ball when it's obviously they can't. I thought it was sort of pretty woeful defending. But yeah, her distribution actually is a key part of her game, isn't it, Tom? And she did that brilliantly.
Yes, and it's one of the things in her armoury that served in her favour when I think Sarina Wiegman was choosing who would be her number 1 goalkeeper for this tournament, because there are still other elements of her game to improve on, whether it be maybe some of the aerial work or the set pieces, but her distribution is really seen as outstanding, and that was helpful to England's game last night. I was surprised how often England played long balls. They had huge success going over the top, didn't they, behind the Dutch defence. And then we all thought at half-time, well, surely Jonker's going to perhaps change tactics a little bit, maybe play a deeper line, or maybe just be more alert to the idea. But then again, second half, England was still finding Russo with balls over the top, pacing behind the centre-backs, and tactically, Wiegman sort of got one over her old colleague there, and they're very old friends, Jonker and Wiegman, and they spoke a lot about that in the build-up. But she, I would say, came out on top significantly on the tactical battle between the 2 head coaches. Absolutely.
I feel like in amongst that, maybe just my Arsenal bias shame, but proper shout out needed for Alessia Russo with a hat-trick of assists as well. I mean, she was flipping brilliant leading the line, and just felt like we hadn't given her enough love yet for that.
No, you're totally right. It's interesting, Paul, isn't it, with tournament football, how quickly you can go from this is a disaster to, oh, we're going to win the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and I did want to have, a little word there that I get saying England were disastrous against France. Like, it was by no means how you want to start your tournament. And I think for about 70 minutes of that game, it was pretty disastrous. But my feeling was that there was a comeback, and then at the end, I genuinely think that could easily have gone to 2-2 had, the game had another 10 minutes. I think England were the ones who were going to score. So in a way, I think it was just one of those sluggish starts to competitions that a team will have sometimes. But I do think if that game had ended 2-2, people wouldn't have been talking in these disastrous terms. And then it kind of sowed the seeds for the start of this Netherlands game, where they just came out and had obviously got rid of the nervousness, maybe the sense they weren't quite physically ready for this. And they were just brilliant. So I don't know. I think there was a slight overreaction, in my opinion, to how bad the France game was. France is a very good team. It's a bit of a group of death. And they just started a bit sluggishly, I thought. And
Russo did have a goal disallowed right at the start of that game, right? And goals change games, obviously, always. So yeah, I thought that as well. A little bit of overreaction to that one.
Tom, is there anyone else you want to pick out? I thought, Georgia Stanway was really open about how she didn't play well in the first game. And I don't know. I thought, I don't know, I didn't hear every reaction. I thought England were really bad in that opening game. And Stanway said she wasn't good enough, the team weren't good enough. And she did play really well in that game last night. And actually her goal, even if it was deflected, was a key moment, isn't it? To be 2 up going into the break. Yeah,
well, Stanway looked like a different player to me, but we have to remember that she hadn't played very much football since Christmas. She'd been out with a knee injury, and I was only just sort of coming back after the end of her club season with Bayern Munich. She was only just coming back into fitness with the England internationals at the end of May, start of June. So perhaps she needed a game like the France game just to kind of build up that match readiness. Against France, she was being beaten off the ball. She lost almost all of her duels. She looked a little bit sluggish compared to the intensity that we were seeing from Guillaume and Kashawi with France. And then last night, it was completely the opposite. Stanway looked like she was first at every ball. She wasn't giving the Dutch midfield any space at all. And then the first time finish for her goal was so emphatic, and that England needed that quite badly because they'd been so on top in the first half. It would almost have been a bit of a travesty if they hadn't gone in 2-0 up. So to get that goal before half-time was crucial. And I must say, Stanway spoke superbly in her press conference on Monday, sort of set the tone for England's performance, in that she said, we know we weren't good enough. Like, we know we deserve to go home if we play like that again. We're going to sort it out. We're going to demand higher standards. We're going to be gritty. We're going to be, as she called it, proper England. And she was excellent. I also want to say how well Lauren Hemp played against her Manchester City teammate, Kirsten Kasperai, who probably went to bed and had nightmares about Hemp last night. She looked like she was going to beat her every time she went one-on-one down England's left, and that was the kind of stuff we've been hoping to see from Hemp for a long time. We could praise all of the 11. I really do think that it's a long time since they played that well, and maybe there was a slight overreaction, but I have to France, but it's just because we know what they're capable of, and we do see it every now and then. So when we don't see it, it's kind of exasperating, and maybe we're a bit unfair to expect them to be at their best all the time. But when they play like last night, that's why we say that England are capable of going on to win the tournament, because they are good enough. They've beaten Spain this year. They've shown last night that they can be right at the top of their game, and I hope now they can stop that streak. They're on a streak of win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, win. So now we don't want them to go back to the loss in the next game, but there's no reason why that should happen now. They should take confidence going forward.
Tom says, how frosty will the atmosphere be in the Miedemar household right now? I mean, I think it's quite interesting, Tom, isn't it? Their partners, and clearly they'd have played against each other, I guess, last season once Miedemar left Arsenal. And that's probably more like they're in camp now. That's probably more in club football that they would probably end up, in the same house after the game. And it must be sort of strange to be in elite sport and to play against each other and live together.
Yes, and particularly for two players who are such high-profile stars for their teams. Miedemar was asked so many questions about this in the pre-match press conference, and she essentially said that their golden rule as a couple was that they would never talk about matches like this. So she said, I would never know whether or not Beth is starting. She will never know what our plan is, and so and so and so and so. But it must be quite hard, must be quite tempting to discuss things, surely. As a couple, you would talk about the game. It would be, what are you up to tomorrow? Well, yeah, I've got a game on. but I kind of loved what Miedemar said pre-match, that if it's a bad day for Beth, that's like a good day for me. Like, if I have to do something that hurts her tournament, I don't care. I'm here to win for the Netherlands. Now, clearly it didn't work like that, but I did quite like the way she brushed off all those questions. I think people were almost expecting her to say something along the lines of that she would go easy on her partner. Her mind was absolutely not. No, if I have to tackle her, I'm going to go full in, etc. So I sort of respected that a lot, but it is an unusual thing in competitive sport. Couples in the women's game are relatively common, but to be in the opposing sides like that is a very unique situation. And clearly one part of that Miedemar household will be very, very happy now. Miedemar, to be honest with you, I barely noticed her in the game. I was doing player ratings for the Guardian website, and I made notes on all the players, and Miedemar's little column was like almost blank. After 60 minutes or so, I realised, oh gosh, I haven't got any notes on Miedemar. I sort of turned to Susie next to me, and we agreed that she hadn't really been in the game, so I hadn't forgotten anything that she'd done. But yeah, you're right to flag it, because it is such an unusual, interesting psychological concept in elite sport.
Yeah, I mean, they probably get bored of the questions, but I think it is quite interesting. Did you go full the keep and give Miedemar 1 out of 10 or something, or were you more generous?
No, for some of you will know our football special projects editor Marcus, who's very lovely, and he advised that a 1 or a 2 is almost unheard of on Guardian football ratings and very frowned upon. So I think I might have actually generously given Miedemar a 5, but there were quite a lot of Netherlands players who you could have given a 3 or a 4, just because they performed so poorly as a team, and it was striking to see them make 3 changes at half time. That sort of panic button mode of the triple change, and nobody in the Dutch team got higher than a 6. Let's just put it that way.
Joachim says, when was the last time you saw someone celebrate a goal like the Welsh team scoring their first ever goal at a major tournament? Paul, it was so wonderful. And I don't think it's patronising to say it like that. I just think it was such a glorious moment for them.
Yeah, and the fact that it would be Jess Fishlock to score the goal, we always have this cliche of you couldn't script it, but genuinely, if anyone ever deserves to score a goal in any game ever, it's Jess Fishlock scoring that goal. With the contribution she's made to women's football in Wales, it's almost hard to think of another player who you could say the same for at that level. She's So yeah, I was absolutely delighted, especially because it looked like it'd been disallowed, which I was like, it seemed like the gods are just saying there's no magic. Yeah, but no, what a moment. And actually, I didn't know a lot of this. I've come to this fresh, and I know a lot of people will know this, but I was reading about the battle that the Welsh women's team had to even exist and how recent that was. And this it's a brilliant piece actually that I read by Megan Feringa in, I think it's the Athletic or the New York Times, about the fact that these three women, Laura McAllister, Michelle Adams, and Karen Jones, had to write a letter that they kind of went in to basically fight to have the right to have a national football team. And the fact that was so recent, it's kind of incredible how far Welsh football has come. And regardless of any result on the pitch, it's an incredible moment, I think. And what a perfect moment for them to score that goal.
Yeah. She made her debut 19 years ago in Switzerland. It's almost an argument for VAR, isn't it, Barry? It's almost all the things that are bad about VAR. Without that, this goal wouldn't have stood.
Yeah, but at least they got to celebrate it twice. So that's one benefit, I guess, from the fact that it was almost chalked off. I don't think anyone from Wales was expecting much. It's all about. Jess Fishlock did an interview for The Guardian before the tournament. And I've seen various other interviews she's given, and she's all about, look, we've broken through a ceiling. Welsh girls can watch us and see what is achievable. And as recently as 20 years ago, this kind of thing wasn't achievable. And I've seen, various packages TV stations have done from the Wales camp, and they almost can't believe the luxury and the way they're being treated. They've got this lovely coach, lovely hotel, lovely camp, and they're clearly not used to that because this is their first major tournament, and they're going to want more and more of it.
Yeah, Tom. I think Rhian Wilkinson, their head coach, she's Canadian. I think she's really impressive, Tom, actually.
Yeah, she's really well thought of in coaching circles in terms of the way she sets teams up. I think she speaks very eloquently and said all the right things in this tournament about Wales and Welsh football and what it means. And the players in the team think really highly of her. The way that they and their sort of people close to them talk about her when the microphones aren't on is quite reassuring. That they're really complimentary about her. So Wales have got the blueprint now to kind of build something to get to future tournaments. The challenge they're going to have is that they really need a bit more quality up top if they're really going to start to threaten some of these teams in tournaments going forward. We know they had a supremely difficult draw, so I don't want to be too harsh on them, but there is clearly a big gap from France, Netherlands, and I suspect we will see a big gap when they play England on Sunday. That said, I was so happy to see them get a goal. You will not find anybody in global women's football who wasn't smiling when they saw that Jess Fishlock was the person who got that first goal for Wales. She's kind of given her heart and soul and her whole life and career to this team. And as Barry was alluding to there, you only have to go back. I think it was the qualifying campaign for Euro 2005 when Wales sort of pulled out and didn't take part in the qualifying because of a lack of funding and resources. And the FA essentially said that they weren't prepared to stump up the cash for things like away qualifiers in Kazakhstan or wherever it might have been. They weren't prepared to fund it. So the difference to now is fantastic to see. And they can hope, even though they will exit this tournament early, I hope that the legacy is going to future tournaments and it starts the ladder of something a bit more special.
Guardian Women's Football Weekly is out 3 times a week during the Euros, so listen to that. More of Tom, if you like Tom. Oh, your hand is up, Barry. Yes.
Well, no, I just wanted to ask Tom. I don't know if they've always been there, but it's only in this tournament that I've noticed England have an annoying brass band. And I wanted to know if their annoying brass band is the same brass band as the one that follows the men's team, or have they got their own annoying brass band?
I believe that it is the same personnel who travel around for both the men's and the women's in very dedicated fashion. They're not to everybody's taste. They're the one they've been doing.
Are they to anyone's taste?
Hey, come on. We know Tom's too nice to do this. He wouldn't give anyone below a 5. He's not going to criticise a brass band, is he?
Can I say I do quite like the twist on that tequila song, where instead of saying tequila, they've been chanting Sarina. And that works quite nicely because it's sort of for a saxophonist, isn't it? And instead it's for played on the brass band. But I know what you mean. There's there have been games when I've just sat there thinking, oh, please with the band, please just shut up. But I didn't mind last night. I didn't mind because it was just it was a lovely atmosphere all the way through the evening. So, and a shout out to the Dutch as well, who did a sort of a 2-mile walk to the stadium, which behind a bus. The bus, I would say the only way to describe it was the bus was playing sort of 90s disco party anthems and ABBA back to back all the way through to the stadium. But about 4,000 Dutch fans were having a great time. And it was clearly illegal not to wear orange because every single person was in orange, which I love to see. But I maybe I'm being on the fence too much, but I might join Barry and say I'm not a fan of the band. There we go.
Okay. Cheers, Tom. Thanks for coming on, mate.
No, great to see you all. Take care.
Tom Garry there out in Switzerland. And that'll do for part 1. Part 2, we'll do PSG demolishing Real Madrid in the Club World Cup. Welcome to part 2 of the Guardian Football Weekly. So PSG 4, Real Madrid 0. I mean, PSG were brilliant. Took the lead in the 6th. Could have been 2 up by that time anyway. Courtois making a couple of saves. And who isn't here, Barry, for some real slapstick Real Madrid defending?
This was a demolition. PSG won 4-0. Could have won by double that amount, I think. And Real Madrid, quite apart from being demolished by PSG, didn't make life easy for themselves because you had very high-profile comedy mistakes from Asensio and Antonio Rudiger. Rudiger's air shot was just something else. You know, there'll be pub footballers all over the country looking at that going, oh yes, thank God it's not just me. But I think it's critical to notice that, or to make the point that those mistakes were forced. You know, he was under pressure, he was being pressed and harried, and that's where the mistake came from. I expected PSG to win this game. I didn't expect them to win as comfortably as they did. A harrowing evening for all of Madrid players and Xavi Alonso, who's been given plenty to think about after 6 games in charge. And he has a big problem now. He said after the game, I leave here with lots of certainties and next year will be different. This game and this competition has told me lots of things about what we are, what we need to improve, the changes there will be. And he's probably learnt good things about his new team, and he's learnt bad things and there's going to be fingers pointed at Vinicius Jr. and Kylian Mbappe. They are a problem.
Yeah.
Not every team that Real Madrid, almost all teams that Real Madrid will face will not be as good as PSG, but their disinclination to put in the graft when their side doesn't have the ball is a problem.
Yeah. And it's so fascinating, Nicky, that because we sort of alluded to it yesterday, but when you think about great forward lines, that press, like Salah and, you know, when the Salah, Mane, Firmino 3, right? And even the front 3 from Liverpool last year, but they are brilliant footballers who also did the work and actually thought by having to get Mbappe into this side, and obviously Trent was injured, so Valverde goes into right back. So there's not as much legs in midfield, but Gula goes deeper. He's been really good playing off the left. Mbappe isn't bad at football. Like, we know that, right? It's so ridiculous to say he's the problem.
Yeah.
He can't be the problem, but he kind of is the problem.
Well, I think we'll see. I do think Xabi Alonso said it well when he said after the game, this is not the start of 2025-26, this is the end of 24-25. And to be honest with you, like this whole tournament, and I think this has been part of my problem with it, there's many problems I've had with the tournament, but one of them is definitely the feeling that, especially now that Chelsea have seen off the last non-European team, it's like, well, I know Paris Saint-Germain are the best team in Europe. They've shown me they're the best team in Europe. They smashed everyone in the Champions League. So now it's like, okay, well, here we are seeing a story that I already knew. Like they won the final 5-0 and Real Madrid got beaten by Arsenal, who got beaten by Paris Saint-Germain. Of course, it doesn't always work like that in football. Of course, like a team can beat a team and someone else can go the other way. Like it's not that simple. But also, it kind of is that simple with this Paris Saint-Germain team because they were so emphatically the best by the end of that tournament that I don't feel like I'm learning a lot new about that. So I think that the fact that they were much better than Real Madrid didn't shock me. I think that Xabi Alonso is entitled to say, look, I showed up and I went straight into this. Now I've got the summer to go and actually start doing my work properly. I think that's all totally fair to say. I do think there are huge questions for Xabi, and I think that this is kind of, even when I talk about it not being new, this is kind of feels like it's just the forever narrative of Real Madrid. Real Madrid are always the club, have been the club since as long as I can remember watching them. They are the Galacticos club, and of course they have times when it's a bit more or less, but still the narrative of this club is the great individuals more than the great collective, whereas PSG's narrative right now is very much about the collective. And I think that what will be really fascinating to watch is whether Xabi Alonso can impact that in a different way. Because actually, when you look at certainly the recent history of Real Madrid, the managers who've achieved the most in terms of winning things are the ones who've been a bit more laissez-faire, who've been a bit more able, like an Ancelotti or Zidane, to go, you know what, you're all really great. I'm going to take a slight step back and let you guys be really great. Whereas Xabi Alonso is much more hands-on, is going to want them to play more like a collective, is going to try and make them into more of a team that will put that work in and be a bit more selfless for each other. And we'll see how that plays out. There's been up till this point in the tournament, there's been all that positive noise about how hands-on he is in training. We'll see what that looks like. I don't know. I don't know if it's just me. I don't know if it's because the Euros are on and I'm more excited about them. I don't know if it's something else. It's really impressive how good PSG are. It's not stopped being really impressive. Luis Enrique has done incredible work there. I just don't know that this feels like it's a new story. It feels like this is just the story that we already covered, and now we're just almost getting it like rubber stamped or something. I don't know.
No, you're allowed to not be that bothered about the Club World Cup. Like it's sort of weird when the big games are happening. You think, well, I'm obviously excited to see this game, and then I don't know what time it starts, and am I going to watch all of it, etc. I mean, the third goal was beautiful. I was a bit sad that Ruiz didn't hit it first time. It was one of those moves that, you know, he scored. You can't criticize him, but I just wanted it to be bang, 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 rather than, oh, don't slow it down, mate. But
yeah, that's something to work on in training there. I think if I was going in, I'd be like, forget that win. Never do that again. There's a manager, isn't there, who I can't remember who it is, but who'd always tell players to hit the ball immediately, regardless of which foot it came to. And one player who he was coaching scored a wonder goal, but had taken an extra touch to avoid hitting it with that foot. And after the game, instead of any congratulation, he just went in and was like, "Never do that again." So that player, that's what I would do, Max. Yeah,
that's John Beck. Substituting Steve Claridge for cutting inside. I think he might have scored, but it didn't matter. I mean, it is worth just re-emphasizing, if you haven't seen the goals, the first two, Raul Asensio, it's not just dawdling on the ball. He basically just turned himself off for about 5 minutes. And Dembele's there. And I think Courtois said something like, I pointed at Dembele and said, he's good at pressing. Like he didn't know, And then Rudiger's miss kick. It does look very much like someone who has never played football before.
But we've all been here saying how this tournament's unrelatable. This is the most relatable thing I've seen in the whole competition. Rudiger's miss kick was just, and his reaction to it was like mine. It'd be like, oh, I have this vision of the ball moving and it hasn't happened, and you just stand there in disbelief.
Well, I think he just touches it with his left foot, doesn't he, before he tries to kick it with his right. It's one of those classic, and then the worst is when you do that and pull a muscle because you've kicked nothing and you sort of like you're expecting something there. Oh, delightful. Paz, do you give Chelsea any hope?
No, I don't. Look, Bayern Munich gave PSG a decent game. That could have gone either way, I think. Chelsea need to have a look at that one and see what did Bayern Munich do right. A suggestion, Moyes Caicedo may be injured, and I think if he misses the final, then forget it. But PSG have a habit of overrunning teams in midfield, so that's something Chelsea need to address. A half-fit Caicedo, is a half-fit Caicedo better than a no Caicedo? I'm not sure who would come in. If PSG have an off day, yeah, Chelsea could beat them, but on the face of all available evidence, you'd have to say it's PSG's. They're going to win this. Like their goals come from everywhere. They've had 11 different goal scorers in this tournament. 10 from their own players, or 10 of their own players have scored at least once, and I think an own goal from Seattle Sounders. That's remarkable. Like remarkable. just they're so dangerous in every area of the field. People are starting to talk about them in the same glowing terms as Pep's sort of 2011 Barcelona side. And I don't think it's an exaggeration to say they're almost that good. There's no weak link in that team.
I feel like I want to come back in having been so like down on it and just reinforce that. I mean, from PSG's point of view, this is amazing. And also like, yes, I can sit here and say, well, we know they're the best team in Europe, and we do. But I mean, what a summer to make of it, where you're almost like crossing off the list, like all the people who you wanted to stick this point to. Oh, Leo Messi, who of course had his infamous moment where he basically, when he was at PSG, told Vitinha, you're not good and you're dragging me down. Well, Vitinha sticks that in his face with Inter Miami, and almost it looked like drove Messi to the point of trying to punch him. Oh, Kylian Mbappe, who thought he was better off going to Real Madrid, well, get stuffed, smash you 4-0. I mean, they really are doing the global tour of sticking it in everyone's faces how good they are. And they are really good. I mean, they are exactly as Baz said. I think this is a generational team coming together. And I think that when Luis Enrique at the end of the game says, Dembele deserves to win everything. They deserve to win everything. They deserve to get these trophies. I'm not trying to rain on their parade at all. Like they are, as a team, spectacular, and the football they are playing is absolutely brilliant. And while I am a bit like, perhaps maybe I'm just again too jaded from a full season. Maybe it's because again I think the Euros deserves to be the number one story right now, and we led on it obviously today. I can still appreciate that the football is brilliant. And look, there was like 3 million views on the highlights of this game when I looked on YouTube this morning. So other people are clearly far more excited about it. So don't let me being a Debbie Downer kill that.
I think your point is really, but Nicky, I think your point is exactly right in that like it feels like a story that's done. Like, okay, they're the best team in the world. We got that before. It's like after this, do we need a universe Club World Cup in which they again beat everyone?
Oh, you'd love that,
I'll
Paul.
be all
wouldn't you?
over it.
Let me take you to the outer reaches of Zargon. I've watched this team 500 times. And we're like,
Tough
okay,
place to go.
Here we go. I see what you're pushing for here, Paul.
Neptune on a Tuesday night, tough place to go. But you know what I mean? Yeah, it's the equivalent of like, you know, do we need to keep reinforcing the point? This is a fantastic team. And I don't think you're overly negative, Nicky. I think it's, yeah.
Nicky, I just wanted to ask you about Luka Modric to AC Milan. Like his last game for Real Madrid, not a perfect one for him, but him in an AC Milan kit feels nice.
Yeah, it feels like a throwback almost to that chapter where I feel like early in my career, one of the things I was just writing about relentlessly was Milan Lab and how they get these older players in and turn them into get another few years out of them. I kind of love it. It's certainly going to be really fun to watch him playing in Serie A. It's an intriguing moment for Milan with Allegri back there and seeing what his project's going to be like. We're getting a few of those very, very big names who are at the tail end of their careers in Serie A this season, of course, with De Bruyne at Napoli as well. So, look, as long as Luka Modric is playing football, I'll enjoy watching Luka Modric play football. He's a fun player to watch, and we'll see what impact he can have.
All right, that'll do for part 2. Part 3, we'll do some transfer stuff. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. So apparently Arsenal have made contact with Chelsea over signing Noni Madueke. Chelsea want about 50 million. They're apparently in for Eze as well. So we can roll out the Wilson iPad analogy from Monday's pod. So Nicky, Arsenal's transfer business starting to look quite good, isn't it? Zubimendi, Gyökeres not over the line yet. Norgard seems a sensible signing. And then it can't be both Madueke and Eze. I don't know. But like, how are you feeling currently?
Yeah, I think maybe a lot of Arsenal fans, certainly I am still kind of waiting to just Gyökeres gets done or a striker gets done. It feels like all of this stuff around the outside, it just feels like, is that the point? Is that what we're supposed to be like most worried about? What was the biggest issue for this team at key moments last season? It felt like to me it was the absence of that number 9 and just that reliability, putting the ball in the net. So I think until that one gets across the line, it feels like maybe it's pessimism that goes all the way back to things like the Luis Suarez incident, where you feel like a transfer is going to get done and then it doesn't. There's this almost expectation with Arsenal that they'll find a way to not do this deal that seemed like it was done, and it will all go wrong. And I think that even with someone like Madueke, there's this feeling of, okay, but like, could we do the important business first, and then maybe we can do this as well. But yeah, like that they are certainly spending the money. Certainly, it's not a passive summer, is it? It's a summer that speaks to, okay, we've recognised that things need to be done, and we need to show that ambition. And I think that's encouraging. But yes, I really want to see the number 9 get across the line personally.
I think there are lots of neutrals thinking, wouldn't it be hilarious if Arsenal didn't manage to get a number 9 by the end of the window? Spinola says, have Spurs just bought Rule Fox Mark II, all dribble and no end product? Agreed a fee of 55 million with West Ham for Mohamed Kudus, set to have a medical. No player completed more dribbles in the Premier League in the last 2 seasons. But where did he dribble to, Paul, in that West Ham shirt, I suppose is the question. I messaged Lars last night going, is he good? And maybe that's a sign if you're having to ask that. But I suppose, Thomas Frank and Tottenham is different to playing for West Ham. He's a wonderful player.
Yeah, I really rate him. Actually, I think he's a really good player. But I do get the point of the end product. I think he's a decent signing. I think they're perhaps overpaying from the figures that I'm seeing quoted, but that's pretty much across the board what everyone's doing for every player. And I'm also very old, so when I see a figure for a transfer, I'm still looking at it as if it's 1996 and Alan Shearer's worth 14 million.
Over $750,000, and you're like, what? This is mad.
Yeah, what are you doing? But yeah, I actually think he'd be a pretty decent signing. And also, Rule Fox, please let's not have any disrespect to Rule Fox. What an absolute legend of a player.
Tottenham apparently also exploring a move for Johan Wissa from Brentford. They had been linked to Mbomo, but he appears to be going to Manchester United, although they can't agree on a fee at this stage. Barry Sunderland have spent big again. Chemsdine Talbi from Club Brugge for 20.5 million. One of the fastest players in Europe, apparently.
Right, I thought you were going to say they'd signed Simon Adingra from Brighton, which is the one I saw. Mr.
Have they?
Yeah,
Oh.
Mr. Club Brugge man, speed merchant, completely passed me by, I'm afraid.
Oh, and Adingra, I think, is a great signing. He's a really good player.
Yeah. I mean, I've gone from certainties to go straight back down to, this is not bad. A few good signings here. And now I'm convinced Sunderland are going to be up there duking it out for the title.
Yeah.
And all that's happened in the space of about a fortnight.
Yeah, 150 million quid that they will have spent. They've signed a left back, Reinildo Mandava, on a free from Atleti as well. So, yeah, exciting times at the Stadium of Light. Robin says, I hope Barry is psyched to be talking about the legal minutiae of Lyon's non-relegation and what it means for Palace. Yeah, so Lyon will play in Ligue 1 next season after the French side won their appeal against relegation. Could affect Palace's chance of playing in the Europa League next season. UEFA could rule on Palace's situation by the end of the week. I did see somewhere that they could, I mean, it's not fudging it, is it? But they could swap Palace and Forest. So Forest go into the Europa League and Palace go into the Conference League, which I guess Palace could win. So it could end up being good, but on the face of it, feels bad. But anyway, let's just wait and see what happens with that. Paul Watson's World of Football. The Champions League has started, Paul.
Yeah, it was a long wait, Max. 38 days, a full 38 days it took.
What phase are we in now?
Well, these are the preliminary round games. So the first game was in the 8th biggest city in Finland, and it was Cups of Finland against Milsam Orhei of Moldova. They were the first game to kick off in the Champions League. The first team to be eliminated will be next week, and because of the fact the games aren't scheduled parallel, it will be one of Kairat from Kazakhstan or Olympia Ljubljana from Slovenia will be the first team to be eliminated, and they'll go out before most teams have even sort of got back from pre-season training. They'll be out of the Champions League. But Kairat made some headlines in this one because they had one fan at their game against Olympia Ljubljana, and all the players went up into the stands and gave this guy a hug, and they had a shot that looked like a team photo, but it's just this one fan in the middle, and they're all hugging him. And the reason is, it's not because they got a rubbish away support, it's because the distance from Almaty was about 6,000 kilometers. So he's a pretty hardy guy. And potentially, if Santa Clara from Portugal, who play in the Azores, like in the islands in the middle of the ocean, if they were to meet Kairat, the distance there would be 8,103 kilometers. So that'd be the biggest away trip in possible in UEFA if that happened.
It reminds me of when I did Fantasy Football League with Paul Merson, and we'd just say it was free tickets for audience members to come. I think like Mike and O'Neill was a guest, and like every Northern Irish person in near London came. Like it was enormous, and most guests you'd get a few. And there was one show where one person turned up in the audience, and it was like, we almost didn't want to tell the guest, and I don't think I should name them. It doesn't feel fair that this is the audience. We just sort of gave them a pair of headphones and like a just something to make him look like a clipboard, to make him look like he was just part of production. So it didn't look like there was just one person coming to watch this guy talking about his life and his career. Anyway, Jimbo says, any mention of Shelbourne v Linfield to be appreciated? You wanted to talk about this game, Barry?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. So Shelbourne are the reigning champions of the League of Ireland Premier Division in the Republic of Ireland. Linfield are the champions in Northern Ireland. They got drawn together in the first qualifying round. So it's a two-legged tie. It's worth 1.7 million euros to the winners. The losers get 960,000 and go into the Conference League qualifiers. So it sounds like peanuts, but that's big money for those kind of teams. Shamrock Rovers were in the Conference League or Europa League last season. They got nearly 7 million euros for getting to the knockout stages. But what was interesting about this was Shelbourne were managed until very recently, by Damien Duff. And between the draw and the game, he resigned after a very public and coruscating takedown of his players and what he perceived to be their lack of motivation and effort in a game against Cork City. So his assistant and very good friend, Joey O'Brien, formerly of Bolton Wanderers and West Ham, he's now in charge of Shells. David Healy, Northern Irish legend, he's in charge of Linfield. So they met last night in the first leg at Tolka Park in Dublin, which is a stadium I used to visit very frequently when Shamrock Rovers were sort of tenants there when they were homeless. And it's Shelbourne are halfway through their season, or more than halfway through their season. This was Linfield's first competitive game of this season. So Shelbourne were expected to win because they're just more fitter, more match sharp and whatnot. And they did win 1-0 and were the better team. But it's nicely poised for the second leg going back to Belfast.
Paul, you wanted to mention TNS.
Yeah, well, I wanted to mention no fewer than two Welsh clubs having shirt-related issues this week, which is pretty amazing.
Okay.
So, TNS, the New Saints, the Welsh champions, they had this moment in their game which went quite big on social media because you could see the guys on the touchline scribbling a number 18 in pen on the back of a shirt to give one of their players who ran on. And what had happened is they had an injury to Rory Holden and he got blood on his shirt. So he wasn't allowed to come back on with his shirt with blood. But the only shirts they had on the sideline were blank shirts. So they had to have a number on him. So they literally just wrote it on in pen and pushed him back on, which was great. It caused a lot of confusion. People were trying to work out like, who was he? Is he some mystery player they've like bought on the spot or something? But it was just the same guy. And the other one that's happened is a brilliant one. Is there have been pictures circulating of Penebont's team about to play against Kauno Žalgiris in Lithuania, having to go shopping at the equivalent of Sports Direct because the airline have lost their luggage. So they've all had to buy, I think they probably have their team shirts, I think, but they've all got to buy new boots. So they put a post on social media saying, like, team arrived, tick, airline lost luggage, X, players have worn in new boots, tick. So they're like genuinely having to do what, everyone's done over the years.
How did they get
They haven't
on?
played yet. That's tonight.
Oh, right, okay.
Tonight. So that's the Conference League clash.
Got it.
So yeah,
Got
two
it.
Welsh teams having sort of logistical issues.
Because new boots, you want to get in the bath. You've got to mold them to your feet. You've got to do all of that stuff. There'll be some blisters. There'll be some blisters tonight in Lithuania. Was it in Lithuania?
Lithuania, yeah.
Talk to me about a Finnish team with a Scottish coach and a sausage obsession.
Yeah, so this is SJK Seinäjoki in Finland, and their boss is Stevie Grieve. He's a Scottish coach, very relatively young still. Didn't actually play football. One of these coaches who came through very data-driven, like a great kind of tactician. He's doing an amazing job at this club. They're playing KI Klaksvik of the Faroe Islands. But the thing that caught our mind when we did the Sweeper podcast is that Seinäjoki have this thing called the Sausage Minute, and it's because they have a tie-in with a meat company that if a team scores, I think it's in the 78th minute. If they score in the 78th minute of any game, everyone gets a voucher for a free hot dog for the next game. So when it gets to that minute of the game, the crowd are all yelling sausage, sausage, sausage. And apparently it even starts to impact the team's tactics. Like I think I saw an interview.
They go for it.
Where
they're
like,
launched,
there's a pressure on them to launch shots in the 78th minute. It actually impacts the tactics of the game. So yes, they're playing, as I say, Kea Klaksvik of the Faroe Islands. And it'd be interesting to see how that goes. That's tonight as we record. So
that's
Thursday.
so good. I mean, we should get Mark Langdon one of those shirts. He'll be there. The 78th minute. By the 75th minute, you start just doing it quietly. Sausage. It builds up minute by minute by minute. Who are Bruno's Magpies?
Bruno's Magpies. They are widely known as the best pub team in the world. They are Gibraltar's powerhouse.
Just signed Rudiger. They've just signed Tony Rudiger.
They'll be scouting him. They were technically founded by an 18-year-old in his grandparents' pub, which is Bruno's Bar in Gibraltar. Since then, they've gone from strength to strength to strength and become, one of the biggest clubs in Gibraltar. They're in Europe pretty much every year, and they're playing against Paide of Estonia.
And one question from Moonlight Hanger says, was that a go-karting track behind one of the sides of the pitch where Floriana were playing Haverfordwest County, which I always just thought was a service station, in the Europa Conference League first qualifying round? This is surely testing your knowledge here, Paul. The go-karting tracks of Floriana.
I've got to. I'm going to be totally honest. I don't know, but the annoyance is that Lee, who presents the podcast,
You're a fraud.
was at Floriana last year, so he would have been able to tell you. And if I had been able to let you know that, I would have sounded like I knew everything about every stadium in the world. But I'm not going to try and pretend I know. No, I don't.
For more stories like this, listen to Paul on the excellent Sweeper podcast, which is brilliant, Paul. Thank you for doing it, and everybody go and listen to it. Adam says, Dear Max and co, long-time listener from the States, love the show. I fear you have misled your listeners about a crucial element of American food culture. In a recent discussion of the Club World Cup, you said that players had an unusual amount of freedom between matches. You suggested that they could go to a Midwestern diner so they could drown in ribs. This is frankly terrible advice. A Midwestern diner is no place for ribs. Stick with eggs, hash browns, coffee, pie, etc. If you want ribs, you have to go to a barbecue joint, preferably one in a building that looks like it might fall down in the next strong wind. There are some top rib destinations amongst the host cities, including Nashville, Atlanta, and Charlotte. I hope that in writing this, I might save fans and perhaps players from a disastrous rib-based decision. In the spirit of international friendship, Adam. And I should say, not the only rib correspondence we got. There were many people telling me how incorrect I was.
The best barbecue when I was living in the Midwest, Kansas, was in a gas station, literally a gas station.
Great.
So
good. Whenever me and Mrs. Rushden, we drove through the middle of the States, and she loves a diner, like the aesthetics of a diner. So she wants to go to every diner, but she hates everything on the menu. It's just a total. She's so excited to be in there, to be on those, the red table that's stuck there, the booths, and then there is no poke bowl. There's no tuna salad. Anyway, yes, Barry?
I've always been amazed they haven't taken off over here, those kind of diners with the you see in movies and whatnot, with the booths and the counters and the bottomless cup of coffee. If I had one nearby my house, I would eat breakfast, dinner and tea in there. Or breakfast, lunch and dinner, sorry.
I'm not sure you should have every meal in a diner without wanting to upset the diners of the Midwest or any part of the United States. I think every meal would be pushing it. Anyway, that'll do for today. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicky.
Thanks.
Cheers, Baz.
Thank you.
Football Weekly is produced by Joel Grove. Our executive producer is Phil Maynard.
This is The Guardian.